Take a long week to quit sniffing glue.
Now I'm so happy, no sorrow inside. Praise the Lord, I saw the light.
Well, good morning. It's we're back to week 4 on the Franklin, and we're going to get a lot of good work done this week. I have a feeling in my bones about it. I'm waiting on one more gizmo from Ralph before we can truly close everything up. But this week we are. The first thing I'm going to do is get these nacelles closed up and get the lighting, get kind of work from the back forward. I can get all this stuff done as I am waiting to close up the saucer. And I need to work on getting the rim window lights in and things like that. But first, let's get back on the horse here and show you where we are on the nacelles. Okay, this mess here, and please don't, I gotta switch this out for a clean towel. I was doing some weathering on another kit this weekend, and unfortunately, the towel took the brunt of it. So let's try to get a clean work area here. What I've done this morning before I turned the camera on was I went in and blacked out the inside of the back of these nacelles because there's a significant amount of light leak around those bulbs. The bulb's very strong, and I want to make sure the light only comes out where it's supposed to. And yes, I will be painting the outside of this, but it doesn't hurt while you're at it to throw some paint on the inside to block the light. And lighting the nacelles necessitates a difference in construction from how you might do it normally if you were not lighting the nacelles. And by that I mean, if you're not lighting the nacelles, you could conceivably put all of the entire nacelle together and then push it down onto the pylon and you're done. But doing it with a wiring harness means what I went through last week, basically getting the wire chase up through here and gluing on the outside or the outboard half of the nacelles. Let me get these clamps off of here for a second so maybe you can see things a little bit fresher. So what we have here is the outside half of the nacelle, and I've got the wiring just kind of taped in place to kind of hold it up and out of the way. There's a set of I don't know what you would call them. They are pylon reinforcing. I don't know what function they serve on the ship, but on the model they reinforce the pylon connection there. And you kind of have to, if you're going to pop the nacelles on first, you put the two halves of the pylons together. You put these together over top of the pylons. They kind of need to be sandwiched on top and bottom before after you've built the pylon, and then normally you would pop the nacelle down into there. So can't do that. Have to put this on first, which means makes it difficult to slide the inboard half of the nacelle in, because it has to slide in behind that but also go over top of those pins. So let's see how tricky that's going to be to accomplish. Well, fantastic news. It will slide in. What you need to do is kind of push this down and then slide it back and engage those two pins, and everybody is happy. But now that I know that will work, I want to take this piece back off and take care of a couple of seams that are quite noticeable before we seal this up forever. Most notably right in there. I want to put a little bit of putty over top of that to take care of it. Okay, I've just taken the next big step, which is to glue the inboard halves of the nacelles in. So those are all in and drying, and I'll maybe go back in and reinforce those joints from the inside with a little bit of epoxy, since I can pour it down on the inside of that. Get those all nice and solid, and then it's just a matter of attaching the tails and the bassards to the front. Again, as I've said before, I'm not going to put these caps on until the very end, but I can do all of the stuff that leads up to it, all of the stuff that goes into here, outside of the mixing fans and the end caps but that can all be done, and that'll effectively be mostly done from here up to the front. Surprise in the mail today, I did get the other half of Ralph's lighting kit, which includes the nice little remote, because I need to attach this module, and that way I'll be able to remotely control the features and won't have to drill into a bunch of switches and only a minimum of wiring. So that's a definite plus in the wind column. And the additional window strip lights. So it would be a question of getting that dried in and then starting to attach the rest of the fun stuff. I've got all of these guys joined. I did, yes, Elliot, I did soften them and push them down. Used the heat gun, didn't use a lighter. So I was able to push those down. I got them trimmed off. And I will be able to now attach the bulbs that go to them and wire those in as well. So things are kicking along at a pretty good clip here. Well, good morning. It's Tuesday, and it's time to start putting some guts in this ship. You can see I've got the string lights here all lit up, and I am letting those burn in for a while. And what I've done here is I've closed up the hood, and that's important because of what's underneath it right now. I have removed most of the wiring. I have left the circuit boards in place. No, I'm sorry, I took out the remote circuit board, but I left the other one in place. But here's the big deal of what I'm doing today. Let me pop the top on this. I have to put the camera down. Okay, you can see with the lid off, what I've done is I've put in a inside wall, inside retaining wall for the window lights. Well, I'm back. I had to do a couple things. I had to spend a good hour and a half cleaning up the house because I've got special company coming over today. And B, I had to let the battery recharge. So where we left off was I was putting in this back wall to attach the window lighting to, because this is that stuff that has the adhesive strip on the back. And to use the adhesive strip on the back, you really have to have something to stick it to. So what I did was build up this real thin wall. And I wanted to make sure that it would close over top of that and nothing was in the way, so we're all good there. But we are quickly getting to the point where I have to get out the burning tools, the soldering irons and things like that. So I need to do a good cleansing of this table and move paints off of and get ready to switch gears and do some soldering. So I will probably do that after my company leaves, maybe a little bit later in the day. No harm letting things dry. I put some tulip around the inserts here to a light block around the outsides of them. This plastic is it's white plastic. Mobius normally uses gray, but this is a white plastic for this test shot, and it is letting light through like almost it was not even painted, but there is a coat of primer on it. I don't think it would hurt anything for me to go ahead and shoot another coat of primer over the top of this while I am waiting. So let me go do that. Okay, I've got the first long strip soldered together and did not burn my hand miraculously. Didn't lose any fingers or toes. And that is going to be this window all the way around and back to that. Sorry, I had to sneeze. And back to this window. But I think what I want to do first, because this plastic is so translucent, is I think I'm going to put a strip of the silver tape, the light blocking tape, down around there to block the light, obviously. Okay, now that we've got this area blocked off with the silver tape, it's time to peel off the back of the adhesive and stick the strip LEDs in place behind it. Well, as you can see, all of the strips are in, and I'll tell you, it's going to take a man-sized job of light blocking on the top, well, not on the top itself, but around those windows. You can really see the hot spots, and some of those windows are masks and some of them are not, but it's really going to take a job of painting to block out where you don't want the light to come through. That's just the nature of using so many lights inside. But, you know, it's just something we have to overcome. But I think it went in rather nicely. Again, we've got that big problem. I may want to paint the inside of that with some tulip or something before we close it up for good. But you can see the windows blocked. The windows themselves are blocked. But that was the goal. Okay, I think this is about where we're going to close it off for the evening. I've got these lights going all the way around here to there, and then up under there, and then back to there. So that's one big circuit. I still need to figure out exactly how I'm going to deal with those two fibers. But things are, like I said, it's going to be a man's job worth of blocking the light on this kit. I've got the thruster bulbs wired up. They're not, I mean, they're not, I've got bulbs wired. They're not wired into the board, but that is progressing nicely. And we'll pick this up here tomorrow. It is Wednesday. It is day 2 of the wiring odyssey that we're embarking on as far as the Franklin. And the time has come where I need to determine, and I have made my determination that right here. These wires, the power wires, need to exit. They need to exit the ship. I cannot power this internally, nor would I want to, because that would mean sealing a battery in, and that's not going to work. Or making a removable battery hatch, and that's not going to work. So what I'm going to do, what I figured is the most, or the least intrusive, is I am just going to cut a hole for, come on, get out there, cut a hole for a pigtail. This is the, ideally I would make a hole somewhere in the ship where I can mount this plug, but this plug is awfully big for the amount of room that's in the ship. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a hole right there and pigtail that wire up through there, which will leave that plug hanging out of the bottom, and then I can kind of disguise that into the stand. So I need to start putting some wiring down. I need to start gluing some stuff. Now I've got the thruster bulbs in place. I've tested those work. I've got the I've got 2 more banks of windows here that I need to put strip lights in. So that is going to be the next stage, and then I can start the very, very delicate matter of joining the top and the bottom. It's going to be tricky. It's not going to be pretty. There will be lots of cussing. I will spare you all of that. I'm going to also take advantage of this open space here and put down some foil to block the light around these guys while I have it out and open, because like I've said before, this plastic is very thin, not thin, but very it doesn't block light very well. So the most I can do with the tape, the better off I am. Okay, what we've got is a completely working light circuit. Here is the thrusters, the impulse engines, of course the regular lighting, the Bassards. Let me speed those up. There you go, speed it up. And if I close this down, you can see the red and green strobes. Now, I'm to the difficult part of closing all of this up. I've got these last 2 fibers that I need to somehow train to go to a light source, and then it will be ready to be closed up. Yes, it's not pretty, but it works, which, you know, I think is probably what's going to be etched on my tombstone. He wasn't pretty, but he worked. Well, I got it closed. It didn't take near the amount of fussing and fighting I was expecting it to. But you can see I've got the God's own source of light leaks all over the place, so that's going to be a challenge and a half to get rid of. So best thing I can think of is try to throw some glue at this and get the multitude of clips out, and then let it set aside while everything dries. Then I can start tackling the details and the light blocking. But everything seems to be working just fine, and I will hit the thrusters underneath so you can see them firing. Imagine it laying on its stomach like this, and you hit the thrusters and you get some lift that way so that you can take off. But yeah, you can see all of the light leaks galore here. It changed its name to USS Light Leak. Okay, we've got one last look at it open before I'm getting ready to close it up. I've decided a two-prong on the gluing. I'm going to put 5-minute epoxy around these posts, and then I'm going to clamp everything together, and then after it's clamped, I will run the 10X along the seam line as it's supposed to be used, and then clamp the bejesus out of everything. I think I'm going to take the opportunity to put just a little bit more of the silver tape in, though, to cover up some more spots. Make it easier to light block. Okay, say hello to the Starship clamper size. Yep, that saucer's all clamped up. But this is at no point do you want your lights to go out, but certainly if they're going to go out, you want them to go out before you do something irrevocable like gluing up the saucer. So I always like to run the lights while things like this are happening, just to make sure nothing is shorting out and everything seems to be working. We've got 2 impulse engines. We've got running lights. We've got window lights. We've got nacelles working. Everybody's happy. I can from the bottom I can see that those flickering lights are working there. Yes, okay, wonderful. Okay, walk away from this for a few hours and then come back and take the clamps off. Good morning, it's Thursday, the gateway of the weekend, and I am doing up some final body work, for lack of a better term, getting ready to put some paint on this beastie. And I think what I'm going to do is get everything to the point where I've got all the joints sanded and the seams filled, and get a set of the masks on, and get some primer on it this week, and maybe Monday we can start with the metal coats on it. But I still have a day's worth of work, good day's worth of work here. I have just put in the impulse engine covers, and I'm sitting those in a bed of microcrystal clear, so those are those white shapes, those are gonna dry clear, but they have orange bulbs behind them, and there's some little bit of gap filling and some seam work that needs to get done. There are a couple of lights here. Here's one, and I believe the last one is back here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open those up, drill through the hull, and let the light from the inside, because there's a ton of it, come out through that. And of course I'll put some sort of microcrystal clear or some mask over that to stop it, get the pointing device out. Cut these open here and let the light from the inside shine, and just mask that off and put the tiny clear parts over that. But rather than trying to dedicate a bulb to it, I think there's enough spill light going on inside that those will light up just fine without me having to stick a dedicated bulb there. Actually make use of the light, the lack of light blocking, make that work to my favor. So, and then there's the last bit in here. I'm going to close that up. I'm not quite ready to put the front of the nacelle caps on yet. There's one more bit of masking I want to do with these so that I can cut some circle masks for folks who want to paint the different rings, maybe a different color or something. Plus, I want to have one that's just a good old paint mask block so that you don't get any paint on it while you're doing your other stuff, but before you put your Bizarre Collector cap on there. So, let me drill out those guys and I'll be right back. Okay, here's just a little preview of the kind of work I'll be doing next week on this. I couldn't resist it. I just had to get out some metal paint and then paint metal on the saucer, and then try to go in it with this Vallejo oil stain paint. Very watery. Just kind of let it go in the panel lines, and then dab it off with a Q-tip. Play with the amounts of rust, and then I think an overspray on top of that will really blend some stuff in. I'm just trying to decide which effect and which color combinations are going to give me the best results. So this is the play time, the experimenting time, the time that doesn't, I won't say it doesn't count, because it certainly lays the groundwork for what I'll be doing, but I'm just playing and trying out stuff, and if I don't like it, I will simply prime over all of it and start again. But trying to find out which colors and which combinations of things is one of the fun parts of the job. And then just going in and dab it out. It's like any kit, any good weathering kit, or any good weathering job, it's a combination of the washes and the dry brushing that you do. But figuring out now on a small scale is really going to help me when it comes to doing the large scale stuff. But I think that's really coming out nice. Now I'm just playing with some colors on here, because I know in my heart of hearts that I've got to cover this with another coat of primer to knock the light leaking down. So knowing that I have to cover that up again, I am just playing with some color choices. And this looks a lot darker on the camera than it is in real life. But I'm just playing with some jet exhaust and some burnt metals, and just playing with some different colors to see how I like how they're turning out and how I need to blend them back up, things like that. So it's a good chance to do it now and see how it looks on the actual kit, knowing that I'm going to have to light block and put another primer coat on it anyway. Okay, I have in one hand a complete set of templates for the Franklin. I have in the other hand the said Franklin. I need to put a bunch of primer coat on this to do some more effective light blocking. So what I need to do before I can do that is to mask all of the windows. I've got a good portion of them already masked, but I'm going to do the rest of them, and that way I can go heavy-handed with the filler primer to make a good thick coat that will hopefully block all the light. Okay, I've got all of the windows covered, and it only took that many off of the sheet. I've got plenty more than you'll ever need, but since they're small and might get blown off with an airbrush, you have replacements out the wazoo, or you could even use on another model. But I think we're ready. I think everything is ready to go. I'm going to throw some of the primer into the airbrush and paint it on. Well, here we are. Everything is nicely grayed and primed, and we're going to let this dry overnight, and we'll come back to it tomorrow. Well, good morning. It's Friday, and it's the last work day of the week on the Franklin, and I have just stepped back inside. It's very cold outside, but I did pop out long enough to put a what I'm considering probably to be the last primer coat on the Franklin. Let me get the light over here so you can see it a little bit better. I've put multiple primer coats on it because, and probably more than you ever will need to on the actual kit, because of the plastic that was used here. Knowing what I know now, I definitely would have primed the inside of the kit a lot better than just putting tape in, because of, and I particularly would have painted the inside of these window pieces. Those pieces were never painted on the inside, and that is where the majority of the light leaks are coming from. So definitely on your real kit, I will paint the inside of those bits with some light blocking gray primer before I put the windows in behind them. But this is the last bit of the priming, and I'm going to go out to the hobby shop today and look for a suitable base color. You might be tempted, because of the lineage of this, to paint it with metallics like the NX, because it does share a lot of history with the NX, a lot of the design cues of the NX. It takes place story-wise a few years after the NX was in service. Actually, I think this was a this was like the first ship to go warp 4, and the NX was the first, NX-01 was the first ship to go warp 5, but this was not painted in the same metallics as the NX was. It is actually closer to this ornament. It was not white by any means, but it was a very light gray, almost a cream color. And the reason I say that is because, unlike most other starships in the movies, you get the opportunity to see this not only once, but twice under regular Earth-like atmospheric conditions. Once on the planet before the takeoff, and secondly, when it crash lands in the Yorktown, again under regular lighting conditions. Okay, this is one of my primary reference pictures, captured thanks to Daniel Broadway, who was able to make some screen caps so that I wouldn't have to keep going back to my Blu-ray and watching it over and over to get these details. But you can see that it is aged, yes, certainly aged. It's not going to be a bright white or a bright ivory-ish color, a warm white color, but certainly you can see that it is not a metallic reflective color. It does have some darker accents like those fins, which also seem to be on the warm gray spectrum, and of course a lot of that rust work will, the stripe, the weathering and the aging will warm it up considerably, but it is predominantly this whitish color, not a metallic. Okay, and here's the screen capture of the crashed version in the Yorktown base, and you can see that it does have some darker accents to it, certainly, and I think a lot of that comes from where the rust tends to gather along this feature here. Is more of an accumulation of dirt and rust than it is it being a separate color. There are similar bits of darker color on the nacelles and the back here and on this ridge up here. Of course, the glasses on the bassards have been broken on both of these. Come on, focus. Focus. But yeah, you can see the broken glass there, or broken bassard, whatever that is, transparent aluminum for all I know, with the silver-ish mixing fins on the inside. But definitely, and then you can see those stripes here are a different color, and there, and then you can see it. Let me go backwards a few pictures here. Hold on. Here is a pre-takeoff capture of the ship before it gets ready to leave the planet, and again you can see the darker fins here. There's that orangish red detail stripe. Oops, get it back on camera here. Where's my cursor? Can you see it? Well, there's the orangish red decal or stripe right there. Of course, the orange impulse engines down here. Zoom in on that a little bit so you can see it. There's that orange reddish stripe right there, and it follows along here. Darker details, some darker details here, and again the accumulations of rust to make these shapes look darker, and then you can see some of that striping up here on the engine. But definitely more of a grayish ivory, or grayish, I won't say beige, but definitely a dirty white than it is a metallic color. And then here you can see the various lights in the Citadel area that have been taken care of. Okay, I just got back from the hobby shop, the RC store, and I picked up a couple colors. I couldn't find the exact color I wanted, So I picked up a couple to blend, and what I'm going to do is do like 75% flat gold gray and about 25% Panzer Interior buff to give me that tinge of ivory to the gold gray, which is already a warm gray. And then I've picked up this. This is British Crimson for the striping. It is not quite your bright red, your bright Federation red. More like a dusky, corally red that needs to go on here. But I don't think I want to paint it over the gray. So I want to put a light coat where this is going to go, and then paint the red on it, and then paint, put the masks down and do the final painting. But this will at least give me my first coat, which will also help light block, and then I can fine tune the color as I go for maybe on the second coat. So let's mix up some stuff and get to painting. Okay, then I've got a good coat of the gold gray. It's actually a gold gray / SP lettering gray. This is the old poly scale. I know it won't last forever, but I'm stretching that bottle as long as I can. But it's given me a nice, see, you can see where we're going here. It needs to be a little bit lighter, but this is a wonderful base coat, and I can toy with the lightening it up on the top coat, which will also give me some nice shadows and relief. I'm gonna let this go for a little bit left this afternoon, and I'll probably paint in the reddish stripes, and then that's where we'll let it sit for the weekend, and then we'll come back next week and start putting the rust and the aging on it. Looking pretty good. Oh, this also, in the process of this painting, it also exposed some cracks that weren't visible through the primer, such as on the seam of the pylons there. I've got some seams that I need to put some putty into, and I can do that and let that be drying this weekend as well. And the stripes are on. They're sloppy. They're not that clean, but they cover the areas that, I got out my old hand and hand painted it rather than airbrushed them on. That's probably why. But they are on. They are in place, and they will be drying all weekend until such time as we get back onto this on Monday to put the paint masks down and paint the outsides of them. I've got some of that plastic putty down, and I'll maybe touch that up throughout the weekend so that Monday we are ready to hit the ground running with the top coats of paint. But we're coming right along. Okay, I found something that would help that light leak. I took my tiniest 3-haired brush and watered down a little bit of the black tulip, and I just painted it in that crack. And I may have to go back over some parts of it again where it didn't quite fill in the gap, but that took care of, I would say, 90% of it, and I'll go back in and touch the other 10% after that's had a chance to dry, and that should take care of a goodly portion. That one yellow light there you see, I peeled off the old mask and put a new one in just because I wanted to see how bright the lights were getting, and because I've got a blue million of them in the kit. Let me do one with this, let me pick this round one right here just to show how bright these windows are going to be. Trying to do this with the camera on it, and it bouncing around on the stand is not the easiest. Come on. There you go. See that those windows are going to be quite bright when the masks are removed. Come on. Get off of there. There you go. It's off. But now you can see how bright those windows are going to be. And because, like I said, there are a blue million of these, I can pull another one off of the sheet and pop it back in place to protect it from the next coats of paint. There you go. And that's why it looks all nice and yellow. Okay, I don't know if that last bit recorded or not, so I'm going to try it again. Putting a last look at this guy on the turntable for the weekend. I've got, like I said, I pulled off some masks here and there, and I'll put new ones on, but I just want to show off some details here, like the impulse engines there look very nice. Those are all covered with tinies, and the red stripes are on, sloppily that they are, though they may be. Here are the engines with the domes on the front. Now I did not put the little mixing paddles inside there because it's strictly for show right now. See, it keeps popping off. This may be troublesome here. This frame around the main picture window. Main picture window will be fine, but the frame itself might need to be hand painted in because I don't seem to be able to get any paint back in there with the airbrush. But things are looking good. I will turn the thrusters on underneath, even though you won't see them a lot because they are buried under a lot of paint. Let me see if I can turn those on to where you can see them. Yeah, you can see that they're there, but they are massively covered up with paint, so they will be a lot brighter than that. But this is where we're going to leave it for the weekend. And that, my friends, is where we're going to leave it for this week. Got a pulled out. Major amounts of work done. Let me unplug it. Major amounts of work done. Closed up, base coated, light blocked, pinstripe or red striped. Not too much left to do, but to do the top coating and then the weathering. And that will be the subject of next week's excursion into madness. So there's still a little bit of sanding I need left to do on some seam work. I may touch that over the weekend so that I don't bore you with that next week. But coming down to the wire on this one, and we put him back in the saddle. Then we'll do something interesting with the stand. I haven't quite figured out exactly what I want to do with the stand yet. And then we'll pick on something else. So until next week, when we'll get back at this, be good to each other, and we'll see you here next time.